NASDAQ hosted a closed-door meeting earlier this week in Chicago with representatives from about half a dozen different companies. Why Facebook's recent losses could end up being crypto's gains. Another hedge fund manager coming out and saying that Bitcoin will rise in the coming years, in particular over 6,000% in the next 6 years. Some information on Venezuela becoming a safe haven for Bitcoin, and an SEC chairman coming to crypto's rescue. So if we want to start off just looking at the overall global market cap and how every other coin is doing today, basically still right around 300 billion US dollars, not much has changed. Bitcoin up less than 1%, so basically exactly the same price as it was 24 hours ago before it had that little slight dip, which by the way, could potentially have been somewhat affected by that SEC news about the Winklevoss ETF getting rejected. However, that was the second time that ETF was rejected this year, so it wasn't necessarily expected to go through. Kind of, if anything, that was used more as a FUD piece or a FUD article in the media. So yeah, I think its impact was probably pretty small, if at all. It was also necessary that we had somewhat of a little pullback before we continue to go higher here. Usually in cryptocurrency, most days we see consolidation or at least sideways trading, and that's what we're seeing these last 4 days. We can't have candles like the 16th, the 17th of July, and the 23rd and the 24th every single day. That wouldn't be healthy, and so it's very necessary to have red days like this. Although today it seems we already bounced back what we pretty much lost over the last 2 days, going from about 7,800, currently we're sitting a little over 8,200. So if we jump into the first article here published on businesslive.co, so NASDAQ just hosted a closed-door meeting earlier this week in Chicago to talk about cryptocurrency, and about half a dozen companies were there. And the source for this article as well said that this will not be the last time one of these meetings will take place. Quoted here saying, "I do believe that over time we're going to find that there really is a utility in cryptocurrencies," Friedman said at a Bloomberg event in June. As you're probably aware, Facebook suffered pretty great losses. I think Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, lost, I think it was like 16 or 17 billion dollars of his own personal wealth when this happened yesterday on July 26th. The social media giant Facebook itself lost over $120 billion in market value. And this article says, if you're wondering how Facebook's losses could possibly be associated with crypto, the answer is simple. It all started with a comparison between the values of Bitcoin and Facebook. So Rand Neuner here had this tweet, perspective, Facebook lost the entire market cap of Bitcoin, 47% of the entire crypto market cap overnight, which kind of just goes to show how small the cryptocurrency market cap currently is and how much room potentially there is for growth in the future. Ricardo Spagni is quoted as saying, "It's so volatile. Why would you want to invest in something that can drop just 20% in a day? Why would you put your money anywhere that is this risky? It sounds like a massive scam, a giant Ponzi scheme, and the bubble is clearly bursting." No, he's not referencing crypto there. He is referencing the topic of Facebook stock. And there are a lot more tweets here that are pretty humorous. Basically, the main point is that cryptocurrency is seen somewhat, less and less every day, but somewhat as a riskier, very volatile investment. However, we see something like Facebook, which traditionally should be pretty safe, lose such a massive amount of money in just a single day. I actually like this tweet here a lot. So it says, "The next flippening will be the winkling when the value of the Winklevoss Bitcoin holdings are greater than Zuckerberg's Facebook stock." If you're familiar with Zuckerberg and the Winklevoss twins, that's pretty funny there. And then I'm not going to spend too much time on this article, but we have another hedge fund manager saying Bitcoin will rise over 6,000% in the next 6 years. It talks a little bit about what happened yesterday with the Winklevoss second-time Bitcoin ETF rejection by the SEC. Again, not much of a shock, and even if it did come as a shock, it seems as though the prices have already rebounded, which again is showing good momentum for the market. A lot of optimism, I think, right now. And so Mark W. Yusko is a hedge fund manager and CEO of Morgan Creek Capital Management, and he had this tweet here. "My view from April is unchanged. The network effect of Bitcoin is powerful, and all that matters today is securing ownership of the network. The daily price is just noise." So his predictions here, 25,000 by the end of this year, 75,000 by the end of 2020, 200,000 by the end of 2022, and $500,000 US dollars by the end of 2024. Again, that's even one of the more conservative predictions that I've seen for Bitcoin, especially by people in the space with a lot of capital. He's quoted here as saying as well in an interview with The Street that if you look at Bitcoin price history, there's been 5 parabolic moves or crashes, and we'll have a 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and it's just the way it works. So I don't think you need a big event, and you've seen it in the past couple of weeks, right? As soon as the price starts to run, the people that have been waiting on the sidelines make sure that the bear market is over and are ready to jump in. And then once it actually starts moving, then it starts moving fast, and that's when you get those parabolic moves. Even though he is very bullish, he personally believes that there could be one last dip before a big rally at the end of this year. And he also isn't even really factoring in an ETF, which he doesn't necessarily think is going to happen anytime soon. Yet he still remains very bullish on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. So whether or not this is correlation or causation, this is tweeted out by an account called Obi-Wan Kenobit. He tweeted here saying, follow up to my earlier chart. In Venezuela, local Bitcoin's volume rose as price fell. Bitcoin is becoming a safe haven. There's been a lot of news about Venezuela and Bitcoin over the past 6 months. And you can just see, according to this graph here, as the Bitcoin's price fell, Venezuelans began buying up the Bitcoin and using it in place of their national currency. And so a lot of people are also talking about the SEC Commissioner Hester M. Pierce. So after the SEC shot down the Winklevoss's second attempt at that ETF, she had this to say: the Commission's mission historically has been and should continue to be to ensure that investors have the information they need to make intelligent investment decisions, and that the rules of the exchange are designed to provide transparency and prevent manipulation as market participants interact with each other. The Commission steps beyond this limited role when it focuses instead on the quality and characteristics of the markets underlying a product that an exchange seeks to list. So she took office back in January of this year. And yeah, it's nice to see people in government and in power that are in favor of cryptocurrency. As well, I'm sure many of you know Chairman J. Christopher Giancarlo, who again spoke a few months ago at one of the hearings and came out in support of cryptocurrency. And so she also believes that an ETF denial will also harm investors and it will not protect them. So Pierce further alleged that the SEC's concerns about Bitcoin, that the underlying markets are subject to manipulation, applied to many other exchange-traded products that have already been approved by the agency. And she said this did not apply its rules consistently to Bitcoin, kind of giving Bitcoin an unfair treatment there. So she argued the SEC's decision will be harmful to investors rather than protecting them because it will deprive them of an opportunity to gain exposure in this nascent asset class in a regulated marketplace, and will also stunt cryptocurrency's growth as an institutionalized asset. If we were to approve this exchange-traded product at issue here, investors could choose whether to buy it or to avoid it. The Commission's action today deprives investors of this choice. She's saying here that she rejects the role of gatekeeper of innovation, a role that is very different from the mission of protecting investors. So it's nice to see somebody who's aware of how the government is treating cryptocurrency, why it's wrong. And it's nice to have supporters in government, because there are people like this. There are people that want to see Bitcoin given a chance, and whether or not it's given a chance in the US, it's happening around the world. So this is a global phenomenon. So, I mean, in the long run, it almost doesn't really matter what the US decides. But yeah, just to end the video, I kind of wanted to look at Bitcoin here. Again, this chart is looking pretty good, and I wouldn't be surprised. I would actually be probably happy, like I've been saying, if we continue to consolidate for a few days instead of making a big move up anytime soon. You can see here we spent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days pretty much consolidating after a nice uptrend for about a week and a half. Spent 2 days really blowing up to 74, 7,500 US dollars. Consolidated for about 5 or 6 days there. Then had another huge burst on the 23rd and 24th from about 74 all the way up to 8,400, so about $1,000 in 2 days. And yeah, I just think for overall the health of the market short term, I think it would be good if we continue to hold our place where we're at. The fact that the market barely moved, or at least rebounded very quickly after the news of the ETF rejection yesterday, even though it's not the ETF people are very excited about, it's still an ETF, and the fact that headlines like that are not having that great of an impact in the market could be seen as a really good sign for Bitcoin on this continued uptrend. And yeah, I guess leave a comment below whether or not you think we really have started the bull run, because I've gotten a lot of comments saying that. And leave a comment below if you think we have not, and we do have another major dip on the way, like that hedge fund manager that I mentioned earlier seems to think. And I actually wanted to add this little piece to the video. If you've managed to stick around this far, then you get a little bit of a sweet treat, a little bit of a bonus treat. So aside from the cryptocurrencies that you all know that I really do like, I'm going to talk about two that I think are going to be very big over the next 3 to 6 months in particular. And so very briefly, just to talk about them, XLM, which I talk about all the time, there's a lot of stuff coming down for XLM. Notably, I think one of the biggest things that could really affect the price is the addition possibly to Coinbase But in terms of a coin that will be added, Ethereum Classic is the only confirmed coin so far. And so I have increased my position there because I do think that even in terms of short-term gains, I think this is going to be pretty huge. Again, not financial advice, but if you made it to the end of the video, I figured I'd talk about it. XLM and Ethereum Classic are two coins that I think are incredibly solid. More so, I think XLM is more solid than a lot of coins, but I also do think that their prices will be increasing percentage-wise very nicely this year.